Guten Moed, and welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Monday, the 19th day of Nisan, and we continue chapter 41. Let's begin with Tzedakah Gedela, Tzedakah Shemakareves as Geula. So we're holding in middle chapter 41. The Alter Rebbe talks about the importance, we learned yesterday, the importance of serving God not only with love alone, but we need to have the fear of God. The fear of God, meaning you're doing something because of you understand that the greatness of Hashem that you're standing in front of, and at least accepting the yoke of Hashem, the yoke of the King, and appreciating that you are doing what you're doing not because that this is something that you love to do, but you're doing because Hashem wants you to do it. And that is why it's important to have the fear of God, not only when it comes to abstaining from transgressing one of the negative commandments, one of the prohibitions, but also when it comes to do a good thing, when it comes to do a mitzvah, and you're excited about it, and you're saying, "Oh, yeah, I love this mitzvah, I want to do it." You have to pause and say, "Wait a second, why am I doing this mitzvah? Am I doing because I love to do that mitzvah, because it makes me feel good? Or there is Hashem, there is a God here, and I have to submit to Him, and I'm doing it for Hashem." And Alter Rebbe explained that when you do this, when you do the mitzvah this way, with feelings of love and fear, that brings the mitzvah, lifts the mitzvah, makes it soar up high, and it allows it to bring down holiness, because it's not about you, it's about Hashem, and that where it brings the holiness. And when it comes to achieving this level of fear of God, the Rebbe explained that there are different levels. Not everyone is capable of developing in his mind a real feeling that is felt in your heart that you fear God. And he explained that there's different levels. And there is a person that is not capable of developing such fear, but at least he can understand the greatness of Hashem. And what we learned yesterday, when you think about the greatness of God, and that Hashem drops everything, puts everything aside, and He focuses on you, on the individual. And Hashem wants us, each and every one of us, to do each and every mitzvah. And He's waiting to see us, standing upon us and watching us to see how we fulfill His will. So that itself, even if you don't have the feeling, but when you think about this and that leads you to have at least a conviction in your mind that this is the right thing to do, then it's considered fear of Hashem, even though it's the lower level of fear. And then the Alter Rebbe goes on now in today's lesson to say, what about a person who's not even capable of developing in his heart any feelings, no matter how much he contemplates? And the reason being why such a person is not capable, says Alter Rebbe, might be because of his neshama comes from a lower level. What does it mean? All neshamas, all souls come obviously from Hashem, from Atzilus, but the way the neshama comes down to the body, there are different people who have different types of neshamas that goes different types of processes. Some neshamas, some souls have a godly soul without almost any filtering. The soul shines in the body just like it was up there in Atzilus, in the world that is one with Hashem. And then there are souls that go through the process more of filtering the neshama to the point that there are some neshamas that come from a very, very low level where godliness there is not really perceived the greatness of Hashem. All that is perceived that there is a king and you need to follow. Hashem is the king and you need to follow what the king says, but without any feelings. And people who have such neshamas, it's difficult for them to develop feelings, a real feeling of love. So how could they serve Hashem properly? And Alter Rebbe explains that still the fact that they are thinking about the greatness of Hashem, and as a result they act, meaning they take upon themselves the yoke of Hashem regardless of whether they feel it or not. The very fact that they take it upon themselves, they take the serve Hashem, they do what Hashem wants, even though they don't feel it, that also is considered a good service of Hashem. And so let's see inside the way the Alter Rebbe says this. With the Alter Rebbe, Rine, Af mi shegam b'moicha yo b'machshavta eino margish shum yira busha. This is furthermore, even in case of an individual who even in his mind and thought feels no fear or shame, he's not able to develop this in his heart. And why is that? On account of the limited grade of his soul originating in the lower degrees of the 10 spheres of Asiya. Madrigas Tachtoines, the youth spheres, the Asiya. So that person is not capable, at least it's not easy for him to develop the type of feeling of really feeling in his heart. Nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, being that this person intends to serve God, he tends to do what he does because he wants to serve the king, then it is considered a complete service. Nevertheless, since he is his intent in his service to serve the king, this is unequivocally a complete service. Why is that? So the Alter Rebbe explains, because we're talking about two separate things here, two separate mitzvahs. There is a mitzvah to have fear of God, the awe of God, which is a feeling in the heart. You feel the greatness of Hashem, and you feel a feeling of fear of Hashem. You don't want to be separated from Hashem. You feel how small you are. And then there is the avodah. There's a separate mitzvah to serve Hashem like a servant. And serving Hashem, when you take upon yourself just to do the king's will and to fulfill it, that part you are fulfilling, regardless of whether you are able to develop the feeling in your heart. That says the Alter Rebbe, Ki hayira ve'avodah nechshava is lishtei mitzvahs b'minyan taryag. For fear and service are accounted as two commandments, as two separate commandments of the total of the 613 commandments. Ve'einon me'akve zu zu, and they do not exclude each other. You can have this one without the other. Now goes the Alter Rebbe and says a further point. He says, basically, the Alter Rebbe has such Ahavas Yisrael love to every Jew that even, and he explains how even such a person who comes with such a low-level soul still is able to fulfill the mitzvah of fear of God, not only serving Hashem, but also it is considered fear of Hashem, true fear of God. And why is that? He says, because at least, even though that person is not capable of developing a fear throughout the day, but when he thinks about Hashem, And he thinks about, in his mind, he thinks about the greatness of Hashem, and he thinks that he should submit himself to God because of that, even though he cannot develop the feeling. But at that moment when he thinks, that is considered Yirat Shamayim, Mora Shamayim. And the Alter Rebbe is going to bring proof from a story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the famous sage. When he was on his deathbed, he gave his students a blessing that they should have fear of heaven, at least as they have fear of another human being. And they asked him, this is all? That's all you want from us, to have fear of heaven just like we fear another human being? Is that enough? So he told them, Halavai, I wish you would have that. Because the fact is, when a person is about to do something bad, something not nice, he looks around and says, I want to make sure nobody sees me. But nobody looks around and says, oh, I want to make sure God doesn't see me, because obviously you wouldn't do it otherwise. So if you have at least the fear of God, like a fear of another human being, that itself, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai calls it fear of Hashem, even if it's in this level. And that's what Alter Rebbe says, that even such a person is not able to develop a real feeling of fear of Hashem. He's only doing the act of submitting and doing the right thing. It is still considered fear of Hashem. That's what Alter Rebbe says. Furthermore, as a matter of fact, he not only fulfills the obligation of serving Hashem, he also fulfills the commandment of fearing God, by introducing the fear into his thoughts, by thinking about it and seeking to arouse it. Only by wanting to arouse it, seeking to arouse it, that itself is considered already that it fulfills the mitzvah of fear of Hashem. And he explains, because for at least at this hour at moment, at any rate, there rests upon him the fear of heaven, at least like one's fear in the present of an ordinary mortal. If you look at another human being that is not a king, even not a king, who is watching him, so that at least that type of fear he does have at the moment when he thinks about the greatness of Hashem. Because when it comes to another human being, when someone sees you, a person would refrain from doing something stupid, something not nice, if somebody else sees him. And he would refrain from doing anything unseemly in the other's eyes. Says the Alter Rebbe, even this simple expression of fear is termed fear. This is called fear of Hashem. And he brings the proof from the story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai letalmidov, as Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his disciples, may it be God's will that the fear of heaven be upon you like the fear of a human being. So his disciples then reacted and they said, no more than this, just that type of fear. So he told them, yes, indeed. Teidu. He responded that the proof that this is indeed a true form of fear is as follows: for you know that when a person commits a sin, he says to himself, may no one see me. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai showed us that this also is considered fear. However, all of these levels of fear that we learned in this chapter until now is called the lower fear. And it's called the fear of sin. What does it mean? There is the upper fear, the higher fear, and there's the lower fear. The higher fear is when a person is very, very high level, that a person trembles in the presence of God. In the lower fear, there is different levels of the lower fear. Someone appreciates the greatness of Hashem, and he doesn't want to do something which is against the will of Hashem. And yiras chet, the person who fears the sin. We're not talking about a person who fears the consequences, that if he's going to sin, God is going to punish him. That's not fear of God. That's fear of punishment. That's fear of, he's looking out for himself. But in the levels of yira, fear of God, there is different levels. There is the lower level of fear of God, and there's the higher level of fear of God. So like says the Alter Rebbe, rak sheyira zu nikres yirat hatoeh. Such fear, however, is termed yirat hatoeh, the lower level fear, v'yiras chet, and the yiras chet, the fear of sin, shekodemes lechachmasai, which precedes wisdom. Meaning, it is only a lower level of fear, a fear of transgressing, rather than a fear of God Himself. This is a statement in the Mishnah. Im ein chachma ein yira, im ein yira ein chachma. If there is no wisdom, there is no fear. And there is no fear, there is no wisdom. So the question is, it's a catch-22. Which comes first? Is it fear or is it wisdom? And then Alter Rebbe explains that there's two types of fear. The lower level of fear leads to wisdom. If there is no fear of God, fear of the sin, of sinning in front of God, one cannot achieve wisdom. Wisdom is connecting to Hashem through His Torah. And then once a person achieves the wisdom, he can reach to the higher level of fear, Yirei, feeling and sensing being abashed in the presence of Hashem Himself. The higher level of fear is a shamefaced fear, meaning the state of being abashed and overawed in God's presence. The Yisira, because there are two kinds of fear. But without any fear at all, however, the mitzvahs, the Torah that you study and the mitzvahs that you do does not soar on high. Just like a bird cannot fly with one wing. The yira and ava are considered like two wings of the person that makes the mitzvahs that you do and the Torah that you study to fly up high. Because fear and love are two wings as stated in Tikunei Zohar. So we learned until now that it's not enough to have love, you have to have fear, because you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for Hashem. Before you do a mitzvah, you have to contemplate the greatness of Hashem, and that's how both elevate you and bring it up high, connecting to Hashem. The question is, why can it be the other way? Why can't you have just fear? If you serve Hashem with fear, what's wrong with that? Why do you have to have love also? And Alter Rebbe is going to say no. To serve Hashem only with fear also has its limitations. Yes, you serve Hashem, and yes, you are nullified to Hashem, whatever level of fear you have, but it is not the complete you that is connecting. When you're doing something out of fear, you're going to do exactly the way Hashem wants, but you're not investing your everything. You're not doing it with chayas, with livelihood. You're just doing whatever you need to do. You're not going to do hidu mitzvah, doing mitzvahs in an exemplary form, looking for the best, beautiful esrog, davening with all the full the chayas, with all the energy. This is where love is required in order for you to be involved completely. So yes, if it's love alone, then it's about you, not about Hashem. If it's fear alone, you're doing connecting to Hashem, but you're not giving your everything. That is why you said Alter Rebbe, you need both the love, the fear, and the love itself also. Says Alter Rebbe, "V'chein hayir levado yikon afechad, v'lo yiparcha b'leila." Similarly, fear alone is but one wing, and one's service cannot ascend with it on high. Even though it is termed the service of a servant, duly motivated by awe and fear. You need to have also the love. For there must also be the service characteristic of a son, meaning service motivated by love. And again, with love, there is different levels of love. There's love that is generated by understanding, and there is the lower level of love that is the natural love that needs to be revealed. So it says Alter Rebbe, at least you have to awaken the natural love that you have. In order to awaken at least the natural love for God that is hidden in one's heart, so that he should at least become conscious of it in his mind. To recall his love of the one God in his thoughts and his desire, and in his desire to cleave to him. So this recollection of his hidden love for God should arouse within him a desire to cleave to him. This should be his intent when occupying himself with study of Torah or with a particular commandment that he's about to perform. The thought should be, the intent should be that his divine soul as well as his vivifying soul, together with their garments, thought, speech, and action, shall cleave to him, cleave to Hashem, as has been explained above. So in summary, a Jew's divine service must embrace both that of a son who serves his father out of love, and that of a servant who serves his master out of fear and awe. This is the end of today's shir. We shall continue B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow, a good moed, and don't forget to count the Omer. Last night we counted 4 days. Have a good moed.